Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Vobes show live. Impromptu. You don't know when he's going to pop up, and I've popped up now. Apologies for that, but it's lovely to have your company this afternoon. Just a quick, I don't know, however long it is, see if anybody's around on a Friday afternoon on the 16th of December 2022. Is it cold enough for you? It is getting colder, isn't it? As you can see, I've got numerous layers on. I've got this tweed jacket, because upstairs here in the studio, I just have not... not insulated. No, not that. I'm just looking at my thing. It says no data. I don't know why that is. I'm just making sure. Here we go. Audrey Forbes is there. That's marvellous. We must be working. I don't know why it says no data, but there you go. That just confused me for a moment. Are you actually live? Just got in and there you are, says Linda Kane. Hello, Linda. I'm here. I hope you're there. Yes, definitely live. Loads of layers, that's what I was saying. I've got my tweed jacket on because there's no heating upstairs in this room. There's no point heating the whole house, so I've layered myself up. Woolly jumper, two woolly jumpers actually. Underneath this I've got a tank top, then I've got a shirt, and then I've got a thermal vest, and then there's skin and blood and bones, and that seems to have managed to do it. And underneath me I have a lovely blanket wrapped round my legs, which I have trousers and long johns on and socks, 2 layers of socks and slippers. It is one of those sort of days, isn't it? Now, you may be watching this from the other part of the world that is absolutely hot and boiling. You may be in Australia going, don't know what the fuss is about. But then it's summer over where you are, where it's winter over here. Few people to say hello to. Nigel Sadler, hello. And June Hall, hello. Linda Kane, of course, she said, and the lovely Julia, of course, and Audrey Forbes Hamilton. And if you are watching and you'd like to take part and chat to me this afternoon, then please do. It'd be lovely to have your company as we do this. And if you're watching the rerun of this at some point in the future, well, it's very kind of you. Thank you very much. I do have a button to press at some point to say I can put an advert in, which is it always excites me. And it comes up with a little thing that says... do you know, now's a good time to put in an advert. So I won't plague you with those. Sean James Cameron says, I'm munching on a scone and freezing. Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Is everybody looking after themselves? I know it's been a while since I've been here, although we did do one, about a week ago now. Linda Kane says, didn't think it was cold, or am I getting used to it? Well, in the sun, I took a stroll down to the seafront, did about a 3-mile walk down to the seafront, along the prom a bit in a big round circle, came back. I was getting cold towards the end of it, but in the sunshine, absolutely lovely down here in Worthing on the south coast. June Hall says, I wonder where he's put that hot water bottle, Julia. Actually, Julia's left her hot water bottle. When she stays, she often cuddles up to that. She prefers it than me. It's definitely colder today, says Julia. Nigel Sadler says, Sunday snow hasn't even begun to melt in my part of Kent. We have no snow in Worthing, where I am. No snow at all. Haven't had a drop of it. I think we had a flurry, 4 or 5 days ago now, it seems. Maybe, if we're lucky. And that's it. I know my friend Tim, he's up north at the moment in Yorkshire, and he says there's plenty of snow up there. So I'm not at all surprised. He said it was something like -9 last night up there. HW100, hello to you. Very nice to see. Well, I say see you, of course, see your name pop up, which is nice. Still freezing cold, says Sean, and snow still on the ground in London. Time for it to disappear now. My insides are frozen. Well, I know that Sean has been out helping a mate put up a shed in weather like this. So well done you, and no doubt you need a nice hot bath, I should think. Tim Tricker, there he is, snow up in Yorkshire. And it's nice to know that we have a correspondent up north telling us what it's like in the cold regions of the Dales. He told me earlier that he was at York Station. I've been to York Station, very nice station. did it years and years ago, entertaining there, juggling and unicycling and being silly characters on the station when I can't remember what train service it was, the Great Western or something was opening. They got the franchise. It was something like that. Audrey Forbes says, had to jump start the husband's car this morning. Oh dear, it's a shame when the old husband's car can't get going. What was it, an old Morris Traveller? Didn't he have a starting handle? My Morris Traveller used to have a starting handle when I was a lad. I mean, they still do, don't they? But they don't make them anymore. That was a long time ago when I had my Morris Traveller. Daniel Watkins says hello. Hello to you, Daniel. Hope you're well, keeping warm and all those things. In today's show, you can see here, Edge of Frame, look, a whole series of books. I thought it would be quite fun to run through some of the books that I've read this year. Have you been prolific readers? Have you been sitting down when you've got a spare moment and reading, ignoring the television, ignoring the terrors of the world and losing yourself in some books? I have, as much as I can, really, and it's always nice to do that. Stephen Cartwright says, hello all, just started to get dark here in Twickenham. Yes, I think it's the light is fading down here on the south coast, and no doubt all places north from here will slowly start to lose the light. We do like to hang on to it on the coast as much as we possibly can. Cloudless sky it was. June Hall says, I'm missing your spooky tales. Yes, I'm sorry about that, June. It's just I was enjoying writing them and putting them out, and I just needed a break after a load of them, and not that very many people were watching them. So it was a lot of work, as you can imagine, for little reward. And sometimes, you know, the artistic side of one has to take a little rest and go, nobody wants me. Nobody wants the artistic side. They just want the moans and groans and commentary. So on the other channel that I do, you know, the one that's gone escalated up a bit, it's going great guns. I'm very pleased and very proud that it's going great guns, and that anybody would want to listen to the nonsense I put out. But it seems to be there's a lot of nonsense around to talk about at the moment. But over here on this channel, I can have a different persona. I can be more relaxed and talk about different things, which is nice. Jamie Boy says, hello, Richard. Long time no see. Yes, I haven't changed, have I? Same old wizened face that I was the last time you saw me. Which is a shame. I wish I could just get that little bit younger. But then I dare say we all do, don't we? Jamie Boy also says it's getting dark in Sutton. Yes. So sorry about that. And Kaz S. Good evening, Richard. Still have snow here in Kent. Hello to you, Kaz. Hope you're well. Now, and the vintage news. Aop, Chock. Nice to see you. I'm sure there was something I was going to say to you, Kaz, but I can't remember what it was. Your name cropped up somewhere along the line. But anyway, I think you sorted the stuff out with the lovely Julia, so that's the main thing. And Sean is currently in bed with a ceramic water bottle. Well, whatever floats your boat, I suppose. Water, mainly. That's the thing that I always think floats a boat. June Hall says, you're a fabulous storyteller. I watch all your vlogs. You're very kind. You are very kind. If only there was a way of rewarding kindness in this YouTube thing, then I would reward you. But thank you. One of the passions I have is writing. I don't get a lot of time because just found that nobody was interested. You know what it's like when you do something and you struggle and nobody seems interested. And then you see, I've been watching, for my sins, a number of these philosophical YouTubes that come up. And one of them I watched not so long ago, about 3 months ago, says, don't try too hard. You're all trying too hard. And I thought, yeah, but if I stop trying, I won't do anything. Even when I try too hard. It says, when you try too hard, you don't get success. But you know if you don't do anything, you won't get success at all. So it's a sort of baffling situation, really. Although, at the moment, I'm not trying terribly hard on the other channel, and it seems to be working. So, anyway, I don't know if you know about the English Couple. If you're not members of that, that's on another channel. Love you, Julia. We'll put the link up, hopefully. The English Couple. Do check them out. It's Julia and I, light-hearted fun, basically. All very English, all very quintessential, and having a bit of a laugh. In the recent video, we were trying out musical instruments. Just goes to show how puerile we really are, but we have a bit of a laugh with it to try and bring all sides of the spectrum on the on the entertainment value. Matt Mitchell, hello to you. He says it's still icy and snowy with blue skies in Uckfield. Oh, I know Uckfield very well. Used to have a girlfriend in Uckfield many years ago. Up that high street, that steep high street with the lovely park at the back where you have events and things. Yes, very nice. Had a lovely load of fish and chips. Well, chips. I can't remember if we had sausage and chips with Tim one afternoon. I think it was this year as well. When I think it was the evening that my van had been smashed up. I mean, I call it smashed up. It was dented. I reversed into a tree, the silly man. Stars is there. Musical instruments video was hilarious. Oh, brilliant. Blows kazoo, as I was corrected. Kazoo, I think it is kazoo. Julia knows how to pronounce these words. I get a bit tongue-tied. Jamie Boy says next month's CITV's 40th birthday. Is it really? Blimey. And I added a playlist of shows that they were showing on CITV, including an episode of Snug and Cozy. Blimey. What episode? Cozy, you slimping slam sluggy. I love you with anybody. Oh, Cozy. Oh, I wish we could bring them back. That would be hilarious, wouldn't it? Snug and Cozy, geriatric spacemen with Zimmer frames. They could be a bit like the Daleks. These Zimmer frames could be, floating things. Cozy, no, don't take your hand off that. I'd love them to have spoken English, really, but we developed it so that it would go all worldwide. Anybody could watch them. And in the end, they only had one airing, which was a bit of a shame. English couple, you rang, she says. You rang? Yes, we rang. Hello, my lord. Or madam, I beg your pardon. Jude Hall says, put yourself forward in 2 years' time for Prime Minister. Put this country to rights, Richard. I'd vote for you. Very kind of you, June. I think that you must get so much horrible stuff thrown at you when you're Prime Minister. So when you're not Prime Minister, when you've finished your tenancy, like Boris didn't do terribly long, did he? But he's already made £1 million on the back of it on something like 4 speeches, I believe the newspapers were saying, something like that. £1 million for 4 speeches. That would be lovely, isn't it? You just go up there and spout some rubbish about the ancient Greeks or something, whatever he normally does, and they pay you £1 million. It's marvellous. I used to do a bit of speaking, going around to the old WIs and those sort of things and talking about my career, my time as an extra, as a fire eater or whatever it was. I would just tell people about what happened to me in my life, and people, they lapped it up. They did. They were going, oh, blimey, what a life you've had. And I used to work in the arms factory making machine guns for the Russians. And did you? Well, we'll take you outside and shoot you then. You're not supposed to be doing that, Jamie Boy says that, the swimming pool one. Oh, yes, that was, funny enough, the swimming pool one was the very last one we filmed. Let me just get this right. It was the very last, was it of Series 2 or Series 1? Series 1, very last one we filmed of Series 1, because we were all going to get wet. And I remember we filmed that in the swimming pool. We got dry, got dressed, got in a taxi, and we were flown from Glasgow down to London straight away, straight out the pool. We were still taking off the makeup. It was funny because they wanted us at a promotions party in London at Gray's Inn Road, I seem to remember, where the ITV headquarters was. We got there, then we had to redress up as Snug and Cozy, these 2 aliens from outer space, put all that horrible pink makeup on. It's my fault, I designed the thing. And then at the party, they wanted us to run round as Snug and Cozy. And you had all these hobnobs from ITV, all the big executives there. It was hilarious. And I said, but if we do it, we will be as Snug and Cozy, talking our ridiculous language and being silly. They said, oh, no, that's fine. Well, they didn't actually like it in the end because we were going, Cozy, what you got there, you slipping bunk? And we were chucking all the vol-au-vents and the various nibbles and things and knocking trays out because I said, we will be like we are on the thing. And then they said, okay, at some point they went, okay, that's fine. Thanks very much. You can change now and mill around if you wanted to. But to be honest, one look at these executives who were hobnobbing about. I said to Nigel, do you fancy milling about? And he said, no, not really. So we changed discreetly in the bogs and came home. It was great fun. Kaz says the English couple, love the English couple. So much fun in sometimes a gloomy world. It's true. We do try to do our best. And we do it. Sean James Cameron says, congratulations on the 1,000 subscribers. Woohoo! It's marvellous. I believe that the 1,000th subscriber got a kiss and a cuddle from the lovely Julia. I believe that's true. So you all wish it was you, wasn't it? But you didn't time it right. Stars says Gray's Inn is now partially ITV Group owned now. It's mixed business, is it? It was a funny old place, really, Gray's Inn Road, wasn't it? That's used to be where wasn't that Gray's Inn years and years ago? Wasn't that where lawyers and what have you used to be? Or am I thinking of the other the Inns of Court or something? But yeah, it was all glass building and up the elevator and all of that. And we had the run of a floor and it was great fun. Yes, see you've reached 1K mad followers. Yes, it's nice to get there. Thank you, Linda. Votes for PM, says Matt Mitchell, very kind. And Paul Carl Griffin, hello, what ho, he says, still enjoying your shows. You're very kind. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. It's very nice. Now, I'm going to talk about some books in a minute, just waiting for all of you to settle down and, and all of that. Linda Kane says, great to see you've reached, yes, I've read that already. And Juno says, don't forget to invite me to your wedding. I won't take offence if I'm only invited to the evening reception, says June. Oh, that's very kind. I'm not sure. I hadn't popped the question. I think Julia is still married. And we both have, there's that thing about once bitten, twice shy. Nigel Sadler says 1,000 subscribers in 14 days. There you go. What an amazing, remarkable, actually, achievement, which is nice. I will have a slurp of this now. So, books. I thought I'd just run through some books. I thought I've got to have something to come up with you. It'd probably be very boring now. These are just a sample of some of the books. I was just trying to find all the books that I read. I do like reading, you see, and I'm pretty certain that these are all the ones I've read in here. So there's no particular order, although I probably should do them I'll try and do them in some sort of order. Let's have a look. I remember starting off, I think this is a terrific book. This is an old farming book by George Ewart Evans, Ask the Fellas Who Cut the Hay. I think this was written in the I can't remember now, or it might have been written in the 60s of the 30s. There was a number of... 1956, there we go. This is... George Ewart Evans was writing in East Anglia, really, about farming and the farming ways and the traditions in East Anglia and the small villages and all of that. A really, really good writer. I thoroughly enjoyed reading his stuff about the localised farming. And it was a period of time he's writing when horses are just being phased out and tractors are coming in just before the war. And where have I got the other one? Another one, he wrote this one. The Horse in the Furrow talks about it obviously talks about mostly about ploughing. I mean, it sounds very boring the way I'm talking about it. It's absolutely fascinating, the money and the work and the pride. I think more than anything else, the pride, the straight lines of the furrows that were dug and, how much trouble you would get into. The jobs that the kids had on the farms back then in the same thing. Lovely writer, very easy to read, and quite in depth though at the same time, but just another way of life and the simplicity of life. That's really what got me. Is here we are in our lives, we're so complicated, with all of this nonsense that we do, and just that simplicity and the reward in the work. How even though they would bicker, the farmers and the labourers, and the difficulty the farmers had, absolutely interesting that they wouldn't change it for the world. But of course, and they would all get old and tired and weren't eating terribly well and all of these things. But it was a life, that farming was just this way of life. And I think we should bring some of that back. Not all of it. People probably don't want to do back-breaking work, but that community involved. And when somebody was in trouble and one farm was struggling, people would go to their aid. Even though they were rival farmers, people would go to their aid. It was just utterly amazing. I read, and another farming writer was good old Humphrey Phelps. Now, there's 4 interesting books, Just Across the Fields, Over Beyond. What are they called? I can't remember the order now. I think this is the first one. I can't quite remember. And it really charts the story. It's fictional, but it's based on real people and the real way of life, again, back in the 30s. And it charts him as a young man and the way of life. And then he becomes a farmer himself. And it's just, again, similar. This one's in Somerset, you see. So the one's in East Anglia, one's in Somerset. Fascinating, these small farms. And the change. And as the change comes in and the sort of, you don't do like that. You don't. No, no, I don't like them newfangled ways. And then, they're opposed to the tractor, and the tractor comes in. They go, well, I suppose it's all right for some jobs, but there's other jobs on the headland. Oh, you need the horses in there. Definitely need the horses in there. Definitely. So you have all of that. Mr. Buzzabell says, I like Laurie Lee's books. Absolutely, yes. Laurie Lee. What's that one? The one I love particularly, I know it's Cider with Rosie, but the other one, the Suddenly One Day I Went Out for a Walk or something. And it's about Laurie Lee's earlier days when he left wherever he was, in Leicester or Birmingham or somewhere, and he walks down to London, and then he goes over to Spain, as I remember. Nigel Sadler says, who was that landscape farming author you had hoped to meet up a year ago? Any chance you could do that in 2023? Don't know. I do know who it was. I'm just trying. Trevor, what was his name? Trevor. Yes, that was a very good book. He was a landscape archaeologist, I think he called himself. Absolutely, yeah, Trevor. That was and the book is brilliant. I would recommend that. It's one of the. Was I reading that last year? Probably, yeah, because I was going to go and meet him, and that never happened. Sorry about that. And that final book on farming that one of my viewers introduced me to, said, have you read any by Fred Archer? And now he's writing in the Evesham Vale. And sometimes they're quite tricky because he does write in the vernacular, the character speak, in all that there, and they've got all their little sort of like terminology. But it's brilliant because you soon get into it and you go, oh, wow, this is very nice, isn't it? And this is more sort of short incidents that happen. So one of them was about the mad squire who went, I guess had a bit of dementia or something, and ended up sitting in a pond, shooting at all sorts of things in a takes out a chair and sits in this pond shooting. It's hilarious. And he wouldn't let people work. They wanted to work for him, he was wanting them to do work. But as soon as they start working, he was telling them off for doing the work and things like that. It's absolutely hilarious. What was that? The decline? No, that's a different village. The Decline of the Village by Robin Page. That's a brilliant book. Read that over a year. That was last year. Yeah, The Decline of the a Rural Village by Robin Page. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant book, and it reminds you how much modernity has crept in until these wonderful old fields get swallowed up by a motorway, and how all the birds and the bees and the insects all disappear. Which curiously takes me on to this book that was given to me when we were doing our walk, called Wilding, by, of course, Isabella Tree at the Knepp Estate. And I confess I haven't got all the way through. It's very in-depth. I still got a bit more to do on that one. I've read over halfway, but she does get a bit bogged down on the different species. And that's where I found it a bit tricky. The first part of it, sometimes, with books, it's like, especially non-fiction books, you get into it and you go, this is really good, I'm enjoying all of this, and then it's almost as if to sort of pad the book out, they get a bit bogged down, and she's got a bit bogged down on some of the I'm actually closer to the end than I thought, because sometimes you suddenly realise that half the book is full of the references and the index and the sources and the select biographies and all of that. Bibliography, I beg your pardon. But brilliant first half of that I've read. Absolutely fascinating about the, if I remember rightly, I can't remember where it was, in Scandinavia or somewhere, or maybe it's in Africa. I think it's in Africa, isn't it? It's not Scandinavia. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's got some weird names, hard to talk about, but there was this huge bit of land that went back into rewilding and as an experiment because they wanted to see what would happen. And it was all about the roaming animals, the animals that roam naturally, and how they, if you leave them alone, they begin to create an ecosystem where all sorts of things start to happen. And actually, they try it out at NEP, and there's a lot of things that have been written about some of the birds and the various deer and various things that the trying to put this into correct language here, the experts in books have said, oh, this is how these animals behave. But they've only behave in the way they behave, and everybody thinks that's how they behave, because the environment that they now live in is actually more man-made. But actually, so in other words, certain birds, they would say, would only rest in certain trees. But they discovered that that's not true. If you have a landscape that's not being farmed, you would find that these birds were only nesting in trees because there was interruption in their food chain. So although the experts thought, oh yes, the observation is they only live in these trees, well, that suddenly becomes not true, because once you've not interrupted the food chain and nature is doing its thing in its most natural way, these birds are actually living in the ground, or animals are basically they're living in different ways than a lot of the experts ever thought, because we don't really live in a world that is wild. Everything here, since the Neolithic times, really has been farmed and changed, and man has been around. So we have to live together. So it's this slow unfolding of the experiments over, I can't remember how many years, 12 years or something, and the different difficulties of getting permission and the battles of trying to get the land so that they can rewild as close to with. But they also have the problem that there are public footpaths going across, and the members of the public and with dogs, and they can't restrict those, so they have to have certain animals and certain things. But fascinating. Again, it's a world that opens up to you. So very much enjoyed that. Are you still reading Georgiana? I'm getting it as a Christmas present. Julia and I thoroughly enjoyed Georgiana. We've finished it now. We're reading another book, which is a huge tome of a book. God knows how we'll get through that one, I don't know, but it's good fun. But yes, Georgiana is a great read. There are chunks of history and bits of what the politicians are doing at the time, because she's very much embroiled with the politics of the day. But even, and I didn't know too much about it. We knew about the madness of King George and stuff, and that led us off to go and watch the film with Nigel Hawthorne, which is a brilliant film. How accurate it is, I don't know, but it was a brilliant film. And it's a terrific book. The only thing is there's loads of passages where they take excerpts from the letters. It's all built up from the letters that were written, and you think, bloody hell, they kept all these letters, and the woman who wrote the book had to somehow sift through millions of these letters that were winging their way backwards and forwards. It's like going through somebody's text messages today. You can imagine going through somebody's text messages and going, oh yeah, that's to so-and-so, right, put that in that pile, and then trying to construct a history and then also knowing the history of the time. But it was a fascinating read. I absolutely would recommend it, even if you've never tackled something like that before. So hopefully you will enjoy it. I can't remember who said that they were getting that for Christmas. As I walked out one midsummer's morning, absolutely, Paul Carr Griffin, thank you for that. Yes, it's such a beautifully written book. It's a slim book, it's not terribly long, but every page, the descriptions in it, I was writing down. I showed Julia actually a little tiny book. I was taking out some of the quotes, the descriptions of the, I can't remember them now, but things like, the dark-haired leather tanned something crone, bent double by the something, but he would put it very poetically, and you just go, oh, that's so, they're just words, but they've been put into such an amazing order. Absolutely brilliant to read. And when I read that's one of the books that I read out loud to myself, nobody there. I'd often read out loud. Absolutely great thing to do. Linda Kane says, I love the decline of the English village. Wasn't it moving and sad, because in this last 80 years, really, so much has sadly happened. And I think young people, and this is not to denigrate them or anything like that, have no concept. I'm very lucky, I feel, at my age, middle-aged, to have one foot in the analog world, as it were, in the old way, and you have one foot in that world of which you can still feel the roots, and you can feel the DNA of the old world somehow. I don't know how that happens, but I can still feel it. And then one foot in the modern world, which at the moment it's like putting your foot into a hot bath. You know that feeling when you put your foot in a bath and you're tentatively going, I don't feel I've quite put my foot down firmly into this modern world. I feel it's still, I'm not sure if I like it. It's warm. There's things I like about it, but I'm not sure. Maybe I should still. That's the feeling I get. I don't know if you feel the same. Obviously, I don't know that because I'm not you, clearly. Stars says, those piles of history are why archives and the archive field of work exists. Exactly. British Library are documenting pages of the internet, so it's not lost. Well, that makes good sense, because the internet itself and all the exchanges of things, the podcasts and the videos, I'm sure will all disappear. And so that's why I do write a diary. I have great gaps in my diary where suddenly I find, oh, blimey, a month or two has gone, I haven't written anything. But there's nothing nicer, which is a stupid thing to say. But it is enjoyable to leaf through old diary, because it reminds you of things. And I don't think I'd ever do that with the internet and scroll back to old messages and things. Right, what else have I been reading? This was a great book by Tom Hodgkinson. Started to read this around February, March time this year, and I know Sean was reading it. He got it when he heard I was reading it, and we were sort of reading it and comparing notes. So this is the Brave Old World, Practical Guide to Husbandry and the Fine Art of Looking After Yourself. So this is divided up into 12 chapters, basically January, February, March. Each chapter is a month. And it's basically, this guy is he's down in Devon, I think, somewhere in Devon or Dorset, and they've got a rented small holding, and he's desperately trying to make money from it, and he's trying out experiments all the time, like having chickens, and he gives the experience of having chickens for the first time and fighting off the fox, or having to kill a pig and do it in the old-fashioned way of killing a pig. Prior to this, I read what's the guy who does it? He wrote the one about small holdings, that The Good Life with Richard Bryars and Felicity Kendall was based on, in a way. It was inspired by, I forget his name now. I've got his books and was reading his books. The hard work that went into it. This is great, and he recommends also at the same time things to do, but he uses a lot of references to old people, historic people, like who's the guy who did Rural Rides? Quotes from people who've written about things. So I forget his name now. It'll come back. Who did Rural Rides? And Tyrrell. Is it Tyrrell? He's always going on about Tyrrell, who wrote in rhyme. So what are you reading? What are you reading together? Oh, at the moment, we're reading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norris by Susanna somebody or other. I can't remember her name. It was televised. They did make a TV series of it, which I did get a bit lost in. So I wondered if the book would be any good. So I bought a second-hand copy of the book, and again, it's one of those reading out loud is really nice. But it's a huge tome. It's magic and mystery and nonsense set in a sort of Georgiana period of history. Funnily enough, who is that? Who did Rural Rides? I can't remember his name. It's driving me mad now. Anyway, that's what. Loads of. I'm never going to find it. That's the thing. You're never going to find it. Stuff from old times. Anyway, it was a very interesting read because we'd been having Julia and I have been talking about having a Doctor Strange and Mr. Norrell. Is that what it is? Jonathan. I thought it was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, but whichever one it is. Yeah, we were talking about having a small holding. So I've been reading about small holdings and that sort of thing, and farming and all of that. Loads of interesting stuff. I was recommended to this earlier in the year. This was completely different. In fact, I was given this book. That's right. Breath by James Nestor. He's an American doctor or investigator. I think he's a reporter. But he talks about the lost science, the new science of a lost art, it says here. This was about breathing. And it was fascinating. I mean, again, it's one of these books that probably could be cut down to a hell of a lot shorter. And the basis of that book was fascinating because he was saying that we've lost the art of breathing. A lot of people breathe through their mouths. Not a good thing. You should be breathing in and out through your nose. And the reason for that is your nose, particularly in cold air, for goodness sake, don't breathe through your mouth in cold air because you're taking in cold air straight down into the system and cooling your body unnecessarily. Difficult when you're talking to breathe through your nose, I confess. But also, those people who suffer from sleep apnea, breathing through your nose cures it, apparently. And he studied a whole load of skulls, and he said from around about 1600s, we started to breathe through our mouths more than our noses, and our skulls have shrunk a little bit, which is why we have crooked teeth, because we're not breathing through our noses, because it's became... what is it when a human... We've evolved slightly differently. And the skull has shrunk because if you look at skulls, apparently, older than from 60... So what's that, 400 years ago? People didn't have crooked teeth. They may have had rotten teeth, but they weren't crooked. Whereas now we have crooked teeth because they've got the same number of teeth, but they're trying to grow in smaller mouths because this part of the skull has shrunk down. We used to have much wider nostrils because we used to breathe through there, and they would keep you fit. You would breathe better to breathe slower than faster, reduce your breaths deeper. Absolutely amazing stuff. Keeps you healthy, and you're less likely to get all sorts of diseases. And you'll fight off the diseases because your nose is full of the various hairs and things like that. Fiona Hammond is there. Mary says, hello, Richard and Julia, nice to see you. Look, I've got a Mary Hammond jumper on. I need to order some more clothes, more knitted stuff from you, Mary, at some point. Cobbett, yes, William Cobbett. That's the fella. Thank you very much for that. Kaz says, Steve and I are reading a detective story to each other, The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith. Is it Braith? Galbraith. Is it Galbraith? Is it good? Is it good? Cool. Paul Carl Griffin says, I was at the book launch of John Seymour in the 1980s. If that's the chap. Yes, John Seymour. That is the very fella who took a farm. He was living on boats, as I remember it, sailing about the world for quite a bit. And then they became landlubbers. And I think they were in Norfolk somewhere, in the middle of Norfolk. Bought this. They rented. If I remember rightly, they rented this tumbled-down old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere. You had to go down this track, no electricity, nothing. And they stuck at self-sufficiency. And they said it was extremely hard. People think it's easy, but they said it was extremely hard. JWH178 says, hello from Virginia. Hello to you from Virginia. What's the weather like in Virginia? We need a nanny Hammond. Visit Richard. Yes. Oh, yes, we need a Nanny Hammond visit. Yes, we need to get in the van and come and see you and see how you're doing, Mary. That would be fantastic. Nearly got to the end of the books. So I read this, Jeremy Paxman's The English, which was a portrait of a people. Found that very interesting. He's a bit snooty about the English. In his summing up, he looks at different aspects of it, but he sort of sums up that English people... Excuse me, I'm going to need a slurp here. The English people, and it's more of an idea than a thing. That the stiff upper lip and there's a whole... I can't remember exactly what it was. It was... I don't know. Yes, I just remember him being a little bit snooty. There were certain things I agreed with. It is a curious caricature, I think, of the English, of what we want to be rather than what we are. I think that's what he was saying, that it's that being English is an idea, not a thing. That was the message I got from that. But it was nice to read it anyway and get a different perspective. So that was that. Nearly at the end. I was given this book by a lady who ran a pub in Littlehampton, whose name now has just gone out of my head, and Julia will know. What was her name? Who gave me the... it's really annoying me now. It's the old, I've got to that certain age now, haven't I, where we're all going a bit fuddy-duddy. Anyway, this is called Justice for Joan, and it was about the Arundel murder. And I knew about the Arundel murder. It would turn up Ellie. And so Joan, what was her name? Joan Littlewood. Was it Joan Littlewood? Or no, hang on. Joan Woodhouse. Joan Littlewood was the woman who set up the theatre in London, and did Oh What a Lovely War and things like that. So this is a book by Martin Knight, The Arundel Murder. Absolutely gripping story, true story, and it has a sort of twist at the end as the author is going out hell for leather. Absolutely mystery of this death, that in the end you know who the murderer is. He was never brought to justice, and he lived in a house called Fox's Oven, which is just outside Arundel at the bottom of the castle in Offham. And the house is still there. I made a video where I walked past the house. I didn't know about the connection with this, with the woman. She came from up north somewhere, and then worked in London. Religious young girl, was murdered, raped and murdered, and died very mysteriously. Terrible thing. Anyway, that happened in when was that? 1948, I think, if I remember rightly. Terrible murder in the park, at Arundel Park, just up from Swanbourne Lake. Gripping book. In the back of this, he happens to mention another book that he read, a fictional book called Fox's Oven, based on the house. So I had to get that and had to read it. And this very sublime book. Wasn't keen on the ending, I have to admit, didn't like the ending. But beautiful writing, beautiful characterization, beautiful window, I suppose, into 1940s Arundel. So this was written just 8 years before the actual murder. But in here, the reason it was mentioned in the first book was that the author of this book knew, because he was writing, I can't remember when this was written, fairly recently, but he's died now, unfortunately. He knew about the murderer of this book, and there was suggestions in this book about that he knew about the murderer that he must have known. It's a confusing thing, but it's I happened to buy a large text, for people hard of seeing, which for me and my one eye was very handy. But beautifully written, and it's actually written about the real place. This is a fictional story but the real place and all the places in it are real. The house is real, and the description of the house is real. It's quite harrowing in places. The killing of a pig is quite harrowing to read, but it's what people did, and the farming and the people and all that. Absolutely brilliant book. So that was that, and finally, because I'm reading another book now. My last book, which I've just finished. Sorry to go through all of these. I hope this isn't too dull and boring. The Invention of Murder, because that got me into murder stories again. I thought, oh, maybe I could do some murder stories on the show. Maybe that would be interesting, blah, blah, blah. Because I did do a few murder stories. You know, what was the Brighton trunk murderer by, not Henry Mancini, Tony Mancini. Henry Mancini, of course, did the theme to the Pink Panther. Different person altogether, by the way. And various other murders. And we did the one on the murder on the Crumbles by Field and Gray, who did the murder of, I can't remember her name. And I went up to Kew Gardens and got pictures of the actual murder scene and the girl who had murdered, and lots of clues, and read up the whole thing. Anyway, read this by Judith Flanders. Brilliant read. If you're looking for something like that. Absolutely fascinating. It goes through the murders during the Victorian period, many of the murders, ending up with the Jack the Ripper, but it's not. Jack the Ripper is a tiny bit, really. And it's more about how the Victorians made murder a household thing. People would sit down and read about, became absorbed, how newspapers made their reputations, talking about these murders, how they invented things. It went from the broadsides that were being sold at public hangings and the confessions that were supposedly written. It tells you how the Times newspaper, who we think these days of a fairly conservative and truth-telling newspaper, and all very, very proper, how they would make up so much to sell a story, and how the stories were retold over and over again, and how authors, including Charles Dickens and Wilkie Collins and people like that, would use the basis of a murder that was just come out, change all the characters, upgrade them a bit, and all of that. It was a terrific read. Very, very enjoyable. You want a book over Christmas period? Thoroughly recommend that as well. So there you go. Love reading, and it beats the television, you see. So you can sit here for half an hour and talk about these things which are as clear as bell. Clear as bell. I don't know what I'm talking about. Clear as day. How long have we been going on for? Nearly an hour. I'm going to finish soon. And yes, if you're not into reading, you're just missing. You're just missing windows into so much. I'm currently reading about the Duke of Wellington. So gone from murder to the Duke of Wellington. People have sent me books. They're on my reading list. I'm trying to get to them. I get distracted. As you can see, you end up going down, somebody gives you a book about one murder, you read another book, and then in the back there's the bibliography, and you're going, oh, that sounds good, and you order the book, and then it's not as good as it sounded, or it's difficult to... all of that. Let's have a look, see what you're talking about. Shirley's there. Hello, Shirley. She says it's cold in Surrey. I bet it is. Linda Kane's retracted a message. Shirley says, yes, Daily Express article, Andrew Bridgend. That's fascinating. That's on the Vobes, the video I've just released. Do check that one out if you can. Alison O'Brien says, hello, Richard and Julia. JWH says, US weather service warning starting now for mid to late week. Well, apparently blizzards are supposed to be coming here in the UK. It reminds me of the 1962 to 63. We started to have blizzards at the end. I wonder if it'll ever be that bad again. Mr. Basilby says he loves the Pink Panther. Peter Warby says, where's the bell for the top of your hat? I'm not wearing a hat. What do you mean? What hat? The bell for the top of my hat. Noddy. Are you thinking of Noddy? Now's a good time, apparently, to insert an advert. I don't know if you're watching an advert, but I've just inserted one. Get someone to stitch your elbow up. It will stop your arm getting cold. Ah, wait a minute. You're obviously watching a different video. That's the video from a week ago. But he won't. If you're watching that one, you won't quite get this, I suppose. There you go. How funny is that? Didn't know you could be watching another video and still comment here. I suppose you can. English couple, clear as a cow horn. Thank you very much. Nigel Sadler says he's back. I'm reading Lionheart by Stuart Binns. Is that about Richard I? It's historical. Is it factual or is it just a novel? I'm reading about Duke of Wellington, Arthur Wesley, and at the moment he's in India and he's doing all that. I don't really fully understand it. I need to probably read another book, but the author is Richard somebody or other, and somebody sent me many years ago a book called Redcoats, which was his bestseller from years ago, so I will probably follow that up. Not that I'm necessarily into war books and things like that, but, you get drawn in. I want to try and learn as much as the English history as I can before I pop my clogs. I just find, England is such a fantastic and interesting place, as is many other places, of course. Anyone had an advert, says Julia. Did you get an advert? I could press the old button. I bought fake fur hat with long fur ears, so hopefully it'll be warm on my walks, says Shirley. I hope you are. Nobody wants cold ears. Paul Carl Griffin says, Duke of Wellington, I used to live in the house to the first Marquis of Anglesey. Loads of Wellington memorabilia, including the wooden leg, which I have shown on TV. Oh, very interesting. See, I don't know too much about Wellington. You probably know a lot more about it. But I figured he was very important, the Iron Duke, wasn't he? Very important to learn about it. And so I just want to, even if I end up with just a smattering of a vague idea, he's just managed to knock out somebody called Tapu or something. I don't know how you... The trouble is I can't pronounce all these Indian names. He's going across this. There's a place called... What is it called? Avery or Advery, that there's two rivers, and he comes up and he's just battled in there and lost something like 1,500 men. He seems a nice enough bloke from what I've been reading. King Henry the 11th reigns over the empire, says Shirley. It's a novel, but some facts are true. Yes, well, whatever gets you into a bit of history is good for me. No advert, says Linda Kane. Well, maybe the advert will come on a rerun. I'm not that worried. So anyway, it's coming up to 5 o'clock. I'm going to go and light the SE downstairs. Very cold in that part of the house. Number 1 Marble Arch was his address. Oh, was it? Number 1. So I haven't got to the point where he's returned and, settling down to become... Was he Prime Minister for a bit? The Duke? I can't remember. I just think of him with the Waterloo and Napoleon and business. And doesn't he sitting on a horse and his mate gets his head blown off? That's about all I... Henry... Yeah, did I say Henry the 11th? That would be a bit silly. Henry the 2nd, Henry the 11th. How many Henrys were there? They're only up to Henry the 8th. And after that, we've had Edwards and various other people. Yes, see, Holly & Co. Hello to you, Holly & Co. Holly & Co., I'm afraid I've got to go. Bursledon Windmill. Hello to you from a chilly Bursledon Windmill. I was only talking to Paul at Bursledon Windmill the other day on email, and he says the sweeps are back and he's been painting them, but they need to be covered in canvas and they'll be hung, what would you say? Hanged next year. Very much looking forward to that. And Shirley says she likes the Sherlock Holmes books. It's interesting you mentioned that because in here, old Arthur Conan Doyle, to think then, mentions about how Sherlock Holmes gets off the ground because the Victorians invent the detective novel during about if I remember rightly, sort of the second half of the 20th, no, hang on, the 19th century, 1840s, 1850s, 1860s. It goes from being very, how does she put it? It's very melodramatic, and all the thing, a lot of the stories that came from these murders was absolutely amazing thing where someone would murder somebody, they would be absolutely shocked, and then they would murder somebody else, and it would turn out that the person they murdered was their long lost uncle who was going to leave them lots of money but isn't going to leave them lots of money now because they've been murdered by them and they've gone off to be hanged. So these stories would be told in a way that was as they were kind of coming up with stories, and then the police service was formed into a more uniformed, from the Bow Street runners. And then the police service would have these detectives who at first were private citizens and not really related to the police force, but they would be hired in. And then soon the police forces would have their own detectives. And so people would write it from the detective's point of view, and found that people actually, instead of saying this is what's happened and it was sensationalism, someone had been, murdered and their guts had been hound out and very descriptive, it then became much more the detective trying to work the clues out, which is then where Sherlock Holmes came along. And of course, in the next century, Agatha Christie, but she's not in this because she's not in the time period. So it's so there we go. I am reading the complete works of Sherlock Holmes. Oh, brilliant stuff! Starting with a Study in Scarlet, I believe, being the first outing, and it's curious because she mentions in this book again about Sherlock Holmes how his cases start to become more obscure and more fanciful, and yet the readers enjoyed that. They move away from murders and things into like jewellery and unusual, because there was a lot of the newspapers with a lot of gore in it, and people actually moved away from the gore, which was interesting. Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you very much. I don't know when the next one will be back. I'm trying to get Julia and I will do some more of these, but I just thought it'd be a bit of fun to pop up and try and have a theme and a chat and all of that. We'll try and get one in before Christmas. Who knows? Julia and I might do one live on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve or something, depending on when Julia's over here. But thank you very much for watching and tuning in. There'll be more of all this sort of nonsense coming soon. I get drawn to any Charles Dickens book around Christmas. Oh, yes, and Charles Dickens nicked a whole load of these stories as well. And, of course, she also talks about, because she's talking about the real murders and the trials and the way the judges are leading the jury and how certain things were picked up and certain things weren't. And then she tells you about the people who were hanged and what really happened, or at least what they think really happened, and then how it was related. And I think Charles Dickens saw a couple of hangings, and they greatly affected him, as it did. Wilkie Collins saw some as well, and but they were, people went to them. Anyway. There you go. It's all fascinating stuff. But I'm now a soldier in India somewhere, killing goodness knows what on behalf of the Duke of Wellington, as I'm reading whatever it is I'm reading and trying to get my head round it. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a wonderful time. Don't forget to put your nose in a book and read something if you can. And don't forget to keep watching The English Couple or the main channel that I do, Richard Vobes, and this one, As and When. And for goodness sake, keep warm. Holly & Co. says, I'm just reading Great Expectations by Mr. Charles Dickens. I'm sure that you're thoroughly enjoying that. Good old Charles Dickens for a nice look at Victorian England and particularly London, I suppose, and the squalor of it all. It's been fun. I've enjoyed every minute of it, but I'm going to go now. Until next time,